Assalamu alaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. This is my 5th trip into Saudi Arabia. As you can imagine, this is a country I very much enjoy to visit, and I'm always keen to come back. What I'm going to be lecturing about is about the fintech revolution, what's happening, and how this fintech revolution is impacting the growth of different economies, and which is going to be the disruptive effects of fintech. What you have in this slide is the valuation of Citigroup in blue and the number of clients of Citigroup. Citigroup was founded in 1820, more or less. That blue line is the amount of clients this US bank has had over its history. And is the fintech subsidiary of Alibaba. Alibaba is the Amazon in China. It was incepted 3 years ago. The red line is the number of clients Alibaba has. And the red bar is the valuation of Alibaba. So Alibaba is worth today $150 billion. I think this graph illustrates what's going on. One company which is new is worth $150 billion, almost as much as the valuation of a bank which was incepted 200 years ago. I'm going to tell you what's going on behind this and which is going to be the impact. This is 1967, the introduction of the first ATM. Paul Volcker, who was the governor of the Fed, he said in 2009, the only financial innovation I found useful in my life is the ATM. Well, probably when he said this, he was right, because plenty of financial innovations at that time were not producing economic growth. Today, Mr. Volcker would be wrong, because today we have amazing financial innovations linked to fintech, and these innovations can be used to the good of countries and societies. So I'm going to be explaining in a few minutes what explains the revolution of fintech. Second, how fintech is disrupting the financial sector. Third, which is the impact in economic growth and development. Going into the first point, what you have in my left are the oldest written documents in the world. These are Babylonian documents. The discovery of writing is very much linked to the discovery of finance. The oldest writing documents in our world are loans. These cuneiform documents allow us to understand the interest rates these people were charging on people to pay for taxes. So to a degree, the innovation in finance has been very much linked to the innovation of the world. You have the Rialto Bridge in Venezia to my right. In that bridge, the bond market was created in 1268. The development of Western European economies is very much linked to the development of finance and bonds. So what you're seeing today in terms of fintech is nothing new. It's the continuation of this trend of linking innovation and finance. So the first electronic trading was created in 1971, the Nasdaq. As you know, that year, the gold standard was also abandoned provisionally that summer. And to a degree, countries which have been allowing finance to penetrate, especially in rural areas, are countries which have been able to eradicate poverty. Spain, which is my country, had plenty of poverty in the 19th century in places outside the big cities. And the development of rural banks, the development of savings banks was critical to understand the eradication of poverty. So to a degree, the innovation in finance and development in finance, financial inclusion can help a lot, economic development and economic growth. Why this is not happening faster enough? Because you had a huge transaction cost. It is extremely costly to open branches in rural areas. And this has prevented financial inclusion from having a complete development. Now today this is over, because today we have a new branch which is the mobile phone. This allows you to open accounts, to make loans, and to make your deposits. And this is the big opportunity I'm going to be talking in a minute. So which are the new technologies that explain the revolution in fintech? Well, of course, internet, there is 7.3 billion people living in the world. 4 billion are connected to the internet. E-commerce, 2.8 billion people are buying goods and services through e-commerce, namely in China, India, and Brazil. So these 3 countries are the top 3 countries in fintech in the world. There is a huge interrelation between fintech and e-commerce. Smartphones. There is 3 billion people in the world with smartphones. Smartphones are the new branch to make finance. And this is going to be the critical instrument for development of financial inclusion. Artificial intelligence. Today, when you ask for a loan to a machine such as a phone, it is not a credit officer who's saying yes or no. It's an algorithm based on artificial intelligence. And finally, blockchain, which, as you know, is a technology that allows the registering of goods. Hence, this would be a mechanism that would allow the enhancement of loans. In the meantime, you used to have a huge trust in banks. So it was very difficult for a new company, a fintech company, to enter into this sector. What has happened? Following the crisis of the Western banking system, the degree of trust of citizens in their banks came down aggressively from 60% up to 20%. So today, people do not trust banks as much as in the past. And this has opened an opportunity for new entrants in fintech and to seize this opportunity. Second, there is new regulations. I don't know to which degree you are familiar with PSD2. It's the new regulation that is going to be applied in Europe on the 1st of January. This is a mobile phone in which you will be able, with technology, to integrate all your bank accounts, all your loans, all your deposits, all your insurance. And immediately the system will be able to suggest you whether you change your money from this bank into this one, which is going to be offering you a better rate, whether you change your loan from this one into this one because the cost is going to be lower. So technology and regulation are facilitating or reducing barriers to entry and creating this big opportunity for fintech. In the meantime, a few years ago, it was very hard for us to make finance transactions without physical reality. Today, there is a large percentage of finance happening with the mobile phone. As you can see there, in the UK, 87% of financial transactions happen with the mobile phone. So technology today allows finance to enter in every household in a world in which finance doesn't have the barriers to entry it used to have. So you have here the fintech revolution. Good companies, nice companies created in the 80s, in the 20,000 as well, following the emergence of the internet. But it has been since the financial crisis, since 2008, when there has been a huge revolution in terms of finance and fintech. Why? Again, because trust in traditional banks came down and technology had a huge disruption. At this point, plenty of opportunities have arisen. So to conclude, on the first section, why do we have this fintech revolution? First, we have this historical connection between finance and innovation. Second, we have new technologies that are erupting today. Blockchain, artificial intelligence, e-commerce, mobile phones, internet. Third, barriers to entry came down aggressively since the crisis. Fourth, there is new regulations that are favoring the adoption of fintech. And finally, millennials are coming to the power. Millennials are happy to do their business and to do their finance with mobile phones. Having analyzed these reasons why fintech is having this revolution, let's understand how fintech is disrupting traditional sectors. This is Alibaba fintech subsidiary, Ant. I mentioned at the beginning, this company is worth $150 billion. This company did not exist 4 years ago. Now, when you open your mobile phone with Ant, you can see that in one click, you can deposit your money. There is a digital wallet. On another click, you can use your money to your advantage and to put it in a monetary fund, Yuebao. Now, this monetary fund has $250 billion. The largest monetary fund in the world up to now was JP Morgan's monetary fund with $150 billion. So today, this is the largest monetary fund in the world by far. Third, you can make payments. In China, you don't need a credit card. You have your restaurant receipt, you use the QR and you pay through your Alibaba and your Ant account. You can ask for a loan immediately. And as the system knows about you, you are a client, they have your information. Immediately, the system says yes or no. If they say yes, in 1 second, you have your renminbis in your account. And you can make other things, such as asking for a taxi. This is fintech today happening in the largest market in fintech in the world, which is China. Let's try to understand the different drivers behind this. Banking is about deposits, payments, and loans. Also, banking is about other issues such as robo-advising, which is private banking, and algorithmic trading. So let's understand both worlds, retail banking as well as asset management. Deposits. This bank is called Marcus. This is a bank launched by Goldman Sachs 2 years ago in the United States. It was deployed this year in the UK. It's now coming into Germany and into Spain. Now, you download this app in your phone, and immediately you can get 2% return, which is impossible to get in Europe today. Goldman Sachs is offering you no branches, and because they don't have any branches, they can offer you these amazing returns. So this company has been able to, in a few months, just to get $20 billion. This company is also offering mortgages, again, only with one technology, which is the mobile phone and artificial intelligence. Payments. I don't know if you're familiar with this company, Revolut. I have a Revolut credit account. When you come to Spain and you go to have dinner in Marbella, for instance, immediately the cost of your dinner in euros gets translated into reals, and your bank is going to charge you a 3% fee without you noticing it. It goes into your Forex translation. Okay? Now, this company, Revolut, allows you to download the app. You ask for this Visa. You pay $5, and when you pay all around the world with this Visa, you don't get any commissions in the Forex. So plenty of young people and millennials today, when they travel around the world, they always pay with Revolut, and they get the money from the cash machines with Revolut, 0% commissions. So the most profitable segment of the banking sector, which is payments, is now under threat because of these fintech companies such as Revolut. Payments, this is India. As you know, 86% of the money and the cash in India has been abolished under President Modi, Prime Minister Modi, a year and a half ago. So the Indians have developed a very advanced technology called UPI. Today, you can send money to your friends, to your parents, to your colleagues using the mobile phone through a banking technology that is using the mobile phone as a background to make transferences without the need to go to traditional branches. This has been the reason why Mr. Warren Buffett has invested $200 million in the payment sector in India. Lending. This company, the Lending Club, is listed in the US market. It's worth $3 billion. This is the amount of loans that have been intermediated through this platform. It uses artificial intelligence, it detects loan opportunities, and it offers them to investors. This is called the P2P world. Plenty of new ventures trying to do the kind of work that used to be done by banks in the past. Robo-advisors. Do you prefer your wealth being advised by a human or by a robot? You have arguments in both sides. But guess what? Humans have plenty of conflicts of interest. If you go to your private bank is Merrill Lynch, they will have a bias towards advising you to buy an asset management product of Merrill Lynch. A robot doesn't have that bias. And second, human beings tend to be coward when people are coward and brave when people are brave. But if you want to make money in your life, you want to be brave when people are coward, and you want to be coward when people are brave. Robots don't have any behavioral bias, as humans do. So there is plenty of robo-advisors today. They are already advising $300 billion. You just put your risk preferences, and immediately the robot is going to suggest the asset allocation, what funds you must be buying, and which funds you must be selling. Big threat for the private banking industry. What about if you want to invest in the stock market? Do you prefer a human taking decisions in buying or selling stock of Walmart? Or do you prefer a robot looking at satellite images of the parking of Walmart, understand how many cars are parked, and based on that, derive through data whether if there is more people parked there is good sales in Walmart, hence good profits coming? Who do you think is going to do a better trade decision? Well, this is the new trend. Algorithmic trading, quantitative strategies, new trends in asset management. You want robots using big amounts of data to take investment decisions. You don't want humans. Big threat for this industry. And of course, the development of cryptocurrencies have also allowed companies to use the initial currency offerings as a way to finance different ventures. All to all, what you have is a big revolution in the fintech sector, with new entrants trying to compete on the most profitable segments of the banking sector, deposits, payments, as well as loans. And this revolution is not linked to commercial banking. It is also impacting other big fields of finance, such as asset management and such as private banking. Now, having understood why this fintech revolution is happening and how it is impacting the financial sector, let's look into the third point, which is the relationship between fintech and growth. First idea, which are the most advanced societies in fintech? It's not the UK, it's not the US, it's not Germany, it's not Spain. It's China, it's India, and it's Brazil. Again, large countries with plenty of population, not very much linked to a few cities. For them, it's critical to have access to finance. As it is not cheap, and it's not easy to buy, they use e-commerce. When you use e-commerce, it's very easy to migrate clients into finance. Because when you use e-commerce, you want to have your digital wallet. When you have your digital wallet, it's easy to give you a loan. When you can get a loan, you can do all the transactions to the mobile phone. So this is a big opportunity for countries with not a plenty of financial tradition to be at the forefront of fintech. Again, non-Western countries are today at the forefront of fintech technologies. How can we move this into growth? Now, this is a poor guy in China. He's asking for your help. He's not asking for a coins. He has a mobile phone with a QR. And you can just use your QR and your aunt digital wallet to give him a few dollars. So even beggars in China are using the mobile phones. And I think this is telling you what's happening with the fintech revolution. Big portion of deposits are now cashless, moving into digital wallets. And this has plenty of consequences for societies, because the less and the use of cash you have in GDP, the lower the penetration of the underground economy, which means that the tax collections go up, which means that you can develop a social welfare. So there is plenty of interconnections between fintech and economic development. To understand where we come from, as you know, we had a huge success in terms of economic growth in the last 40 years. Probably today we have the best of the worlds in terms of economic growth. And also human development has been on the rise. Any elements you want to look in sociology in the world today, in terms of people getting access to reading and writing, mortality rates between children, etc., we are at the best times of societies. But there is still plenty of things to be done, and there is big barriers to entry. One was finance and financial inclusion. Today we have the tool to achieve this, or to overcome this barrier, which is fintech. So why fintech is critical? On one hand, if you introduce finance into populations in general, you allow for people to move their deposits into the financial system. Once the deposits have entered into the financial systems, you can lend. Once you lend, you have economic growth. So there is a huge interrelation between financial inclusion and economic growth, and there is plenty of academic research supporting this. On the other hand, there is plenty of relationship between introduction of finance and the degree of development. Inequality goes down, directly related to introduction of finance. There is less corruption, and there is less underground economy, which is good for the government, because you can make more taxes, which at the end is good for developing a social welfare. So in general, there is a huge linear relationship between introduction of finance, economic growth, and human development. So you can have situations in which people living in rural areas, because the cost of attending them in finance is very high, they are not able to put their money into deposits, which discourages financial institutions for using these deposits into lending, and this obviously has a negative impact in terms of growth and the development of the economy. Now, what's changing? What's the reason why it's very hard to bring finance into these people? Is the cost of transaction. I just came from a fintech congress in Accra, in Ghana, and obviously you have plenty of population in Accra, but a big portion of population lives in rural areas. There is no way that you can make profitable a branch in the rural areas of Ghana. So this makes this vicious circle that people are not able to put their deposits into the financial system, hence this money is not put for economic growth. Now, how can you break down this problem using fintech? Because through fintech, it's much easier now to be able to put your deposits into a mobile phone through a digital wallet in a well-trusted company. And through that, it's easier that this company is able to put this money into working, such as Marcus, the subsidiary of Goldman Sachs. And by increasing the amount of finance into the economy, you can enhance GDP growth. Now, what is the big gap here? What I've shown you here is data by the World Bank. What you see is that, in general, 69% of people have access to finance, to bank services. In OECD, it's 94%. But there is big gaps. In the Middle East, as you see, only 14% of people, according to the World Bank, have access to full service in terms of finance, okay, which is obviously a very low percentage. And let's look this. New data from the World Bank. You see in this graph to my left, where the access to a bank account is low, which means color close to red, and where access to a bank account is high, color close to blue. And to my right is people which have access to a mobile phone, blue is high, red is low. So there is this gap, especially in the Middle East, between access to mobile phones versus access to financial accounts. And this gap is the big opportunity, because if we are able to convert a big portion of these people, which are unbanked, into people who are banked, immediately you should experience economic growth. I'm not talking only about retail people, I'm talking about SMEs. According to the World Bank, there is 1.8 billion people without a bank account in the world. There is 200 million SMEs without access to finance. So which would be the consequences if we are able to mobilize this through finance and through fintech? Well, according to McKinsey, there is $3.7 trillion of further GDP to be gained before 2025 by being able to close this gap between the introduction of fintech and the introduction of financial inclusion. This is like doubling the GDP of Africa. So there is a big opportunity in these countries with a high penetration of mobile phones, low penetration of finance. According to McKinsey, again, 95 million of new jobs could be created. Another idea, what you have here is a picture of Mr. Hernando de Soto. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was a very famous developer, an economic reformer in Peru. He had an insight. Poor people don't have access to finance, and part of the reason is because they don't have a register in which they can show their own assets. If you don't have a register, it's very difficult to get access to bank finance. So he made a revolution by easing all the red carpet so that poor people were able to register their goods. And through that, banks started to lend people to poor people, and through that they were able to set up their own small businesses. Now, extreme poverty in Peru at that time, 1988, was 65%. After this reform, it went down to 15%. A good example on how if you give opportunities to people through finance immediately, then you can improve economic growth. Now, let's think about the following. Today we have blockchain. Can we use blockchain as a way to ease and to facilitate the registering of goods by people who don't have access to finance? If that is the case, then this experiment in Peru could be a global experiment, and this could have plenty of good consequences. Because when people leave lower class and enter into the middle class, this means plenty of consumption, and consumption, as you know, is one of the main drivers in economic development. The same happens with microcredits. This is Mohamed Yunus, the founder of microfinance, from Bangladesh. Strong correlation between financial inclusion and economic development. By economic development, I mean less gender inequality, less income inequality, more freedom to take choices. Today, the big threat and the big break you have on microfinance and financial inclusion is the cost of doing business, transaction cost, because it's very, very costly to move finance officers into rural areas. This is gone. Today, with fintech, we are able to take financial inclusion in rural areas at very cheap transaction costs, and we can, at the end, have a huge impact with the financial inclusion situation. Use of cash. You can see here how much cash represents as a percentage of GDP. So you have on the top Swiss, 5%. My country, Spain, is the worst in Europe, 29%. It's not a mystery that Spain has an underground economy of 19 points of GDP, whereas Switzerland has an underground economy of less than 8 points. Now, if Spain is able to introduce fintech mechanisms so that cash gets down, the underground economy goes down to the average in the West, which is 10 points. This means that the country can collect 4 points more as a percentage of GDP. And then we can pay for the pensions, we can pay for the army, and we can pay for the foreign service. This is critical because the technological revolution is not only a question of creating value as the owner of Ant. It has plenty of policy-making considerations that I think should be discussed, because part of the big challenge between emerging markets is how we are able to increase the collection base to be able to finance education, healthcare, and pensions. This might be one line to do some research about. I don't know if you heard also about the possibility that central banks, Sama in your case, issues digital currencies. Now, this is being discussed in monetary policy. So as you know, you have cash, which is physical and is universal, it gets to us, but reserves is a way of creating money that is restricted to banks and is digital. Now, what's being discussed is the possibility of central banks issuing cryptocurrencies that can be sent directly into citizens, which would, in a way, facilitate the implementation of monetary policy. So there is plenty of discussion to which degree this could be a good idea, and there is pros and cons. In general, if the central bank was to expand the monetary base through this mechanism, you don't rely today on commercial banks, which is good. It would reduce the use of cash, which is good for our country, because then the underground economy would go down. But there is one problem. If you have a financial crisis in a country, immediately all of us, all the citizens, will rush to put all our savings into the central bank current account. And this could produce a financial crisis in the rest of the sector, so this is something to be studied, how to overcome this risk. Also, think about the big tech companies entering into finance. Amazon today is lending money to SMEs, which are not served by traditional American banks. Amazon is opening current accounts to Americans which are underbanked. There is already 8 million Americans with current accounts in Amazon. And the big tech guys, Google, Amazon, Facebook, are the guys that are a big threat into the financial sector. The last consideration here is Kenya. Now, Kenya is a country which had these problems of lack of access to finance opportunities, plenty of deposits which were not in the financial system, very expensive to make finance business with the Kenyans because of the rural situation. So you had this business called M-Pesa, which allowed people to mobilize their savings through SMS. Through SMS in your mobile phone, you're able to open a credit account, a bank account, and you can put your savings there, and through that, M-Pesa has been able to give plenty of loans. The reduction in poverty in females was 22%. And this has been done using a basic technology, mobile phones, and just the use of SMS. So which are the conclusions? First, what we have seen in our world is how there is a huge interconnection between finance and innovation. Now, this interconnection is now leaving a huge disruption, a huge revolution. Why? Because we never had all this huge level of data on the web. And this level of data, with a huge computing power and through algorithms, can be treated. And this can be used to the advantage of finance. This can be used to the advantage of loans and deposits and payments. Today, you can have your bank account in your mobile phone, your digital wallet, your payment methodology. You could have loans immediately dispatched in your mobile phone. So what this means is a big opportunity for financial inclusion, and financial inclusion, as I expressed, is very much linked to financial development and to economic progress. So to a degree, if we are able to identify those societies where there is a high digital population, penetration of mobile phones, and a low penetration of finance, this is the opportunity, so that by introducing fintech technologies, we can fasten economic growth, and through that, we can have a collective success. Let me finish with this slide, which just appeared from the World Bank. There were 1.8 billion people living in extreme poverty. In 1990, there is only 0.8 billion living today in extreme poverty. 40 million people live in extreme poverty every year. Through fintech, we can accelerate this trend, and hopefully by 2030, extreme poverty will be over, and this will be done because of technology. And that's it. Shukran. Thank you very much.